Morning from Harbour Cars in Chichester. So I'm actually here on assignment for something else, but I've been stuck behind a desk for 2 weeks. I've been absolutely climbing the walls wanting to come out and have a look at some Porsche sports cars, and I'm having a look at the Harbour Cars stock and some others on the Nineworks marketplace. It's made me realise that for £50,000 there is a hell of a lot of variety out there right now. You may think with Porsches, because you know the numbers on them can get massive, you think of GT2 RSs, 911Rs, Carrera GTs trading at about 1.5 million at the moment currently. You may think you need to go quite a way up the chain in order to get like real variety for your Porsche experience, but actually it's not the case at all. And for comparatively elementary money, so we're talking up to £50,000, there's a hell of a lot to choose from. I've got a couple of them behind me here, as you can see, this lovely 718 GTS, a manual 991 C2S, and that really was the trigger for me. And I thought, wow, that's a hell of a lot of modern Porsche 911, iconic 911, for, again, comparatively not a lot of money. So while I'm here, I'm going to speak to the experts at Harbour Cars, and I'm going to pop down the road to another specialist and get their insight on the best Porsches to buy right now for up to £50,000. Let's see what they say.
There's a huge amount of, I mean, you can go potential classics, you can go modern, you can do, you know, as we're going to do family rides and stuff. So yeah, open market.
Next, we've got 3 categories. We're going to go best daily for up to 50k, most Porsche performance for up to 50k, and most underrated. So let's kick off with the daily first of all.
Daily, that's going to be a fairly obvious one. It's got to be, you can get to a Macan 2, Macan S for that. Very, very good car. Fantastic car to drive. Great spec, nice size. What's not to like?
Yeah,
Ideal
lots of them
car
as well, I guess, so you can be picky with spec.
Choice. So you get colour range, you get, as I say, options of galore. You can get wheel sizes, pan roof, tint, whatever you want to get on it. To personalise it, there's open market on it. So there's plenty of choice out there. So, but great cars.
Category 2, most Porsche performance for up to 50k.
So this is probably going to throw 2 on this one, because you can get performance as in actual horsepower for your buck. So 991, 50 grand, 400 horsepower, C2S.
Yeah.
So PDK or manual at the moment.
Yeah.
So depending on what you need, or fun factor 981 GTS. It's going to be a default choice for most people, most likely. But yeah, great buy. Still, and probably always will be, a great buy.
For me, it's the best sounding modern Porsche away from a GT product.
Yeah.
Really raucous, flat six, naturally aspirated bark to it, you know.
Yeah, real presence in the sound.
Yes, great Cayman handling as well, good nimble size.
Yep.
Hard to argue as well with 991s. I know you've got that, that's a rare manual
Rare
behind.
manual one over there at the moment, in a very subtle racing yellow.
Yeah.
And, but a stunning car. The 991 in general is a great car, and at the 50 grand mark, it's on par with GTS. So depending on what direction you want to go, you can get horsepower GT Cruiser in the 991, or all that fun track day, fast road, you know, and again, road trips and stuff in the GTS.
I can't believe that's like near on 10 years old. 50 grand for a 911 that looks to the everyman and woman like a new car. So yeah, we'll finish up then, Chris. Underrated. What do you think's underrated?
See, there's a difficult one, and it, as we mentioned off camera, is something. Is there an underrated Porsche? I mean, you could look at all sorts of stuff, but my mind instantly goes to very left field 944 turbo. Big fan of those.
Yeah, right.
A lot of car for the money. It'd be looking mid-20s, something like that, potentially to get to a nice one. Then you could look at more modern Porsches, but that's default, so let's stick with the 944 turbo. I think it's underrated, great fun car.
Yeah.
Plenty of power for it.
Yeah. I hadn't even thought that. I'd forgotten those cars exist, to be honest. It's definitely left field.
Underrated.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
All
good
right.
car.
Nice, Chris. 3 quick answers, I guess. So, yeah.
Excellent.
Thanks as always for your expertise.
No, you're welcome.
We'll see you soon. Phil, thanks for inviting us here to Phil Raby again. It's nice to have a look around.
Always a pleasure.
So, at 50k Porsches, we were saying that there's a lot of choice up to £50,000 for your Porsche. Let's start with daily driver, if you don't mind.
Okay, well, as you say, under 50 grand, if you start at 0, you've got a hell of a lot of choice. Best daily all-round car, but I think the Macan GTS. Anything with a GTS badge works for me. I think it's a great compromise between performance and usability.
Yeah.
Macan does everything you need. If you have one car, it's a practical car. You can take it off-road if you really want to. It's an estate car, it's a family car, it's a sports car. It drives like a sports car.
Yeah, sounds great as well.
And yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And the GTS is just the driver's choice.
That is interesting because in this task that we've set ourselves, I just think of sports cars. I kind of forget that Porsche's got like a range outside of sports cars. You know?
It is a sports car, just one with 4 seats and a lift and hatch.
Yeah, and a bit higher up, I guess.
And the prices started about 25 grand. A bit smaller than a Cayenne.
Yeah.
But just as usable.
Yeah. So performance, so most performance for your money up to 50k.
I'm going to cheat slightly here and say 996 turbo and 997 turbo. That gives people a wide range. 996 turbo, good ones start at about 30. 997 turbos, so about 45 they're coming in at, so they're fantastic. Both, I mean, it's essentially the same car under the skin. The 997 is restyled, a bit more power, slightly sharper handling and steering. From a driver's point of view, the 997 turbo has the edge. It just feels a bit more alive. Yeah, but they're both fantastic. I mean, it's pretty well supercar performance. 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds, nearly 200 mile an hour top speed. What more do you need?
Yeah, still stacks up today. That as well, those figures, you know, as you
and so usable.
Yeah.
I mean, compared with any other supercar, you can drive it every day. You don't look like a twat. And it doesn't cost a fortune to run.
Yeah.
And it won't break down.
Can't argue with that, to be honest, Phil. Can't argue with that. So let's finish off then as like underrated wild card, really, anywhere in that 50k.
Okay, well, I was thinking a bit more of an entry-level Porsche, so we're covering everyone's bases. 987 Boxster. Prices start at about 10 grand, go up to about 20, 25 for the Gen 2s. Fantastic little cars. The handling's superb, the performance is great. They look good, and they're not too big. They remain a decent small car. And on English roads, that's what you want. And you wouldn't feel shortchanged driving one. It's a bit more modern than the 986 in terms of looks and the interior, but not much more money.
Yeah.
And if you can't afford one of those, get a 986 Boxer for about 8 grand.
Great thing to finish, Phil, unless there's any other observations that you think viewers need to be aware of, I guess.
Like anything, buy a good example with a decent history.
Yeah, Phil Raby, thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure.
Fantastic. So thank you to Chris from Harbour Cars and Phil from Philip Raby Specialist Cars for offering their insight. It's going to be a 5-minute wrap up here. It's going to be a one-take wonder because I'm really pushed for time. I'm using my podcast stuff as well, actually, just to ensure like good quality. So I hope you can bear with on all of that because visually it's not great. Look, what I want to say is kind of, first of all, that up to £50,000, it's a lot of money. It's a hell of a lot of money to me, for example. But in the grand scheme of Porsche sports cars, it is entry level, I guess. But the beautiful thing is, from a buyer, is whether, say, like Rolex, you have to start going like really up the chain monetarily to get a lot more choice. With Porsche, that's not really the case. And actually, it's kind of in the 0 to 50k category where you're spoiled for choice, really. There's lots of options on the table. So that's a really good thing. I want to give, my kind of 3 candidates for those categories. The first one being like best everyday Porsche. As I said to you earlier in the video, I'd totally forgotten about Cayennes and Macans and everything else. I'm going to forget about them as well. For me, life is short. I want to have a fun drive. Doesn't matter where I go, whether I'm going to the shops or around a circuit. So as one car that I think will deliver in absolutely everything as well as possible, I would be going right near the top of that budget. And that would probably get me a 991.1 C4 or C4S. Or a 997.2 C4S. You'd get coupe for that money in terms of 991s. Cabs are a little bit of a push on, especially at this time of year. Really on that, because there is a lot of overlap between 997.2 and 991.1, it's pick your poison. Consider that the 991.1 is probably dynamically a better car kind of for everyday use. It's slightly bigger. You've got some extra technology that will make things a bit more comfortable than the 997.2. However, where the 997.2 wins is it's more traditional 911. You don't have to peel back as many layers for it to reveal itself as a proper 911 over the 991.1. So it's kind of pick your poison there, really. What I will say is, and this is worth bearing in mind, because I would probably towards the side of a 991.1, you have to consider for everyday use that with a 997.2, you can get PCCM Plus upgrade, which gives you Apple CarPlay, which gives you Nineworks Radio and other podcasts, gives you sat navs like Waze and everything else. 991.1, you can't get that yet. and owners have found that a bit of a problem. There is like a CarPlay upgrade you can do, like back of house, if you like, but it is fiddly. There are drawbacks. I've had experience of like problems with sound quality and everything else on that. So that's something to bear in mind. But top level, best everyday Porsche for up to 50k. I'm looking straight at 997.2 or 991.1, anything from that Carrera range. Cool. What's the next? What was the next category? Most performance. To be honest, I've got to agree. A little bit of kind of Chris, but certainly Phil. 991.1's fantastic amount of Porsche performance, but you can't really look past the turbo. The iconic Porsche 911 Turbo. We're in 50 years of the 911 Turbo this year as well. So the magic of those cars is absolutely going to be rammed home to us all as the year progresses. It's still kind of levels of performance that still considered elite really today. I agree with Phil's sentiments that the 997.1 is a push on over the 996 turbo, particularly like from the front axle. It's just a bit more alive, a bit sharper than the 996. But the reality is, would you be getting a good 997.1 turbo for 50k? I'm not sure, to be honest. And this is the thing, you need to buy the very best car you can, because if not, the bills can be expensive. We'll come on to that in a bit. So eliminating that, I would go for a very, very, very good 996 turbo for ultimate Porsche performance in the up to 50 grand category. Lastly, to finish, for most underrated, well, again, I might lean towards what Phil said. I had a drive in a 987 Gen 1 Boxster S that the guys have got in there at the moment. I was blown away by the performance of it. I couldn't believe it's only 14 grand. There's going to be a video on it soon, but I think those cars are too cheap. So I'd probably, again, agree with Phil. The other thing I want to highlight really is when we think of, like elite or kind of blue chip Porsches, a lot of them are like numbered production runs and everything else. But actually, in the up to 50 grand category, if you want something that kind of Porsche has made feel a little bit more special, well, there are plenty of options out there for you, again, in that category. So, for example, they did 911 and Cayman and Boxster Black Editions, numbered production runs. With the 986 Boxster, they did a 550 Spider special edition, again, numbered production run. With the 987 Gen 1, 987 Gen 1 Boxster S, they did an RS60 Spider numbered production run. With the 996s, they did the Millennium Edition. They did with a 996.2, obviously the 40th anniversary that I know all about. All numbered production runs, all fantastic spec, and all comfortably under that £50,000 mark. So again, if you want to look for something that probably is underrated, because again, if you go further up the chain, and you go, what numbered production runs? People clamber after them, right? But again, there are examples of that in that sub 50k category that's worth bearing in mind. Just before I go, a little bit of buying advice. It's a cliche as old as the hills, but definitely buy the very best car you can, okay? There's no point buying a cheap Porsche, because let me tell you, the bills henceforth are going to cause great regret for you. That I absolutely promise. I have done a cut there, one edit. So look, yeah, buy the very best car you can, the very best example you can. I personally would go, especially in that category, I'd go on condition rather than spec. If one had to take precedence over the other, if you can find a harmony between the two, great. But condition over spec, and I think it will pay dividends for your wallet in the long run. The last thing I want to say is, regardless of how much you pay for a Porsche, they all cost the same to run. They all cost proper Porsche money to run. So personally speaking, whether you're buying a 986 Boxster or a 991.1 Carrera S, for example, so, we're kind of bookending that 0 to 50 grand bracket that we're in, I personally would budget at least £3,000 a year to run the car diligently and properly. Okay, some years, you might get lucky, you might have a little bit less to spend, but again, these cars, they do cost money to run. They're not bulletproof, are they? You have to consider as well that underneath the car, they're just not built the same as the older classic stuff. I've said previously on the channel, there's a lot of alley on steel. Corrosion exacerbated by that makes things really difficult every time you need to change things. And again, this is what I've heard from specialists, people that do the spannering. 997 is worse than 996, 991 is worse than 997 for things like that. So you do need to bear that in mind. You know, it's not necessarily the older the car, the more difficult maintenance work is going to be. So just try and remember that if you can. But again, you know, you should be budgeting on average at least £3,000 a year to run your Porsche effectively and diligently. And as I've said on this channel as well, plenty of times in the past, preventative work is much better than like reactive work. It's usually going to save you money in the long run as well. So that's about it. I hope you found it useful. No doubt you'll have opinions because everybody's got opinions these days. Feel free to drop them in the comments below. And yeah, that's about it. Thanks very much for watching Armax TV. We'll see you again soon, where we'll be back behind the wheel of some more special Porsche sports cars.